this is how people want to engage. They kind of want to see how financial markets work.
Right.
Why is the price the way it is? Am I overpaying? Like, am I underpaying? Or how do I know I can trust you? So all of those questions go away by putting a very open, transparent process.
Hi, my name is Brian Hanley, the CEO of Bullish Studio. Welcome back to another episode of the Bullish Studio Podcast. Today, I am joined by CEO and co-founder of Sandhill Markets, Ali Moiz. Ali is creating the Robinhood for private markets, the ability for everyday investors to go and buy shares of pre-IPO companies. These are your SpaceX's, your Notions, your Airtables, Epic Games of the world. Ali and I speak about his experience as an entrepreneur, starting companies, exiting them, and now onto his new journey, Sandhill, where he's helping democratize private markets for everyday investors. Please enjoy my conversation with Ali and make sure that you're subscribed to the Bullish Studio YouTube channel. Shoot us a comment, let us know what you think, and that you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts. Ali, thank you very much for joining us on the Bullish Studio Podcast. It's great to have you. We just got off of a wild auction for Epic Games. I guess, to kick off, you want to just tell us a little bit about what happened?
Yeah, I'm still catching my breath a little bit. We do these live streams, right? So Sandhill Markets does auctions for pre-IPO secondaries, right? We're democratizing access to investing in sort of institutional pre-IPO startups, right? Like Stripe and Databricks and Epic Games and Notion. And at the end of every auction, they last about a week. We do a live stream where the audience can tune in, talk to us, and we shout out people bidding live on stream. We usually have like a VC or a special guest as well to chime in. And these things last for about an hour. They're supposed to last an hour. This one went 2 hours because the auction didn't end. It just kept going in overtime. And I think there were, I have to get the exact number, but hundreds of bids in just the last 10 minutes alone.
That's amazing. So, yeah, I guess knowing the live stream element of what you're doing in the pre-IPO, can you tell us a little bit about your history? I know you started a company in the live streaming space. Can you tell us a little bit about what got you into live streaming and video, and then ultimately into the private markets?
So I've done two startups before this, exited. Both of them were connected to video gaming because I played too many video games as a kid growing up. This is why I have these. And so the last startup was a company called Streamlabs. Started its life as something else, went through a few different pivots, esports and other things, but gaming was like a common thread, and we ended up in the Twitch space, the early days of Twitch, which, if you know, is a very popular live streaming platform for video games, bought by Amazon a few years ago. And we built tools for content creators on Twitch, right? So the people who are streaming themselves playing video games, so typically professional gamers, esports players, entertainers, or just playing video games, and we built tools for these people to stream, to monetize their audience, to engage. So everything from sort of desktop to video, streaming tools to composite, create your video on your machine and then send it to Twitch for consumption, monetization tools to let viewers tip you, and for you to earn that revenue. So I think the company had back when I left, was close to about 20 million streamers using on the platform. We paid out over $100 million a year in payouts to creators. To date, I think Streamlabs has paid out over $1 billion in cash. Not funny money, there's not a crypto coin. This is old school PayPal cash.
That's amazing. So then you exited that company and then started Sandhill. So tell me a little bit about, what inspired the move towards Sandhill, previously known as Stonks.
Yeah, so that company was acquired by Logitech right before the pandemic. I want to say a year, 6 months before, about a year maybe. I got more involved in angel investing, as a lot of founders do when they exit a business. They take the money they made and they waste it on angel investing, which is what I did. It takes about 10 years to know if you're any good at it, right? So I started doing that, did some good deals. But the timeline is so long, right? You have to wait a decade for any exits to materialize. But in the process, I also did some late stage deals, right? So I invested in Airbnb pre-IPO, and that was like a significant multiple in less than 2 years,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, this is cool. You can get startup returns without the startup timelines.
Right.
And that's what we're doing at Sandhill, right? We started something else, also startup investing related, but Sandhill is sort of a mix of like angel investing as a hobby and my live streaming background with Twitch and sort of engagement at scale. We are trying to get individuals into institutional deals,
Right.
like in a nutshell. We get individual smaller accredited investors into these pre-IPO big giant institutional deals that are like hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah, and previously, if I'm an accredited investor and I want to invest in a startup, this has always been, from my experience, has been a pretty like, dark corner kind of part of the world. You got to get on the phone and talk to somebody. You got to have $1 million to put to work. And talk to me a little bit about kind of this democratization and bringing it all online. I mean, what do you think? Why do you think it's taken so long for this to actually get onto the internet? And I think you guys appear to be creating one of the first like live bidding environments for these shares. Can you just explain a little bit about why this might not have existed and your opportunity?
So we'll talk about the before and the after, right? So before, there were ways to get into these deals, right? So you had to know a seller.
Right.
You had to be already close to the company or the founders. So you had to know people in the companies you were interested in buying, right? That's typically how you got into these deals, and you needed to have 7-figure checks, right? So that typically means the universe of people who do that is very small. 7 figures into individual deals, 7 or 8, right? So you're a fund, you're a giant family office, ultra high net worth, where you can afford to not just take a portion of your portfolio and put it into alts, but each deal within that alts portfolio is like 7 or 8 figures, right? So we're talking like, you got to be a family office with hundreds of millions of dollars, right? At that point. So that was the before. Now, in the last few years, there's some platforms that have made it easier, right? So they've lowered the bar to get into some of these deals. So Forge, it's a publicly traded company on the New York Stock Exchange. Is sort of a good example. Equities and others, Zimbardo, Hive. Where now, you can get in for like 50K, 100K into, but that's generally the minimum, into the really interesting, highest in-demand deals, right? Like I'm going to call it the top 25 by market cap on the private side, right? So typically to get into those, you still need that 100K check, just because there's so much demand and they're so competitive. And price discovery is sort of a black box, right? So somebody comes to you, hey, like I have this at $70 a share. How do you know if that's the right price, right? So the process is broken. Sort of, it's a little bit of a black box. You kind of have to trust brokers or you're dealing with. So that was the before. The after is we've taken those 100K minimums, and you could do some of these deals with us for like $1,000, $2,000, right? We've had people invest into Stripe, into a lot of these names for like really low minimums, and we do auctions so that everyone can kind of see why the price is what it is, right? It started at 0, and say the price ends up, we did a Databricks auction, price ended up at 70, and if you watch the whole thing over 4 days, you could see the price going from $1 to 70 and who bid what where.
That's amazing.
So it's very open. And and it's also very engaging, right? Like this is how people want to engage. They kind of want to see how financial markets work. Why is the price the way it is? Am I overpaying? Like, am I underpaying? How do I know I can trust you? So all of those questions go away by putting a very open, transparent process.
I love it. And I think the auction element is definitely a very exciting and engaging area. I mean, we were talking about just the early days of auctions, and still today there's real estate auctions happening in person with the gavels and a man screaming. So I guess, can you talk a little bit about like what's to come? Like what other companies are you looking to, allow anybody to buy shares in? What else is coming up?
Wall Street started with auctions, right? So the history of Wall Street is people would get together on a Thursday at someone's office, actually on Wall Street, and there would be an auction, right? That's how, like 200 years ago or whatever, these things started 250 years ago. these things started. And so auctions are at the heart of all functioning markets, whether it's real estate, cars, securities, Pokemon collectibles or whatever. And we just hope to expand all sort of the auctions available on the platform. Generally, we want really good companies that people like, that have best-in-class products, that are category winners. So, we've had like SpaceX, OpenAI, Stripe, Databricks, Epic Games, Rippling, what am I missing? Epic Games, just in the last few weeks, right? These are names like on the platform, transacted in the last few weeks. Various stages of closing. We're going to keep playing with both the format, because it's very fun, it's high engagement, it's very transparent and buyer friendly. And we're also going to expand the number of names, right? So like really securing supply, bringing it to the platform for the names people care about is like half the battle.
Right. And I guess then to that point, if you're a employee at one of these companies, you guys are going to those employees and saying, hey, look, I can actually help you get liquid on these shares, and then you bring them out to auctions. Is that generally how this works? Got it. Nice. So if you are, I guess, one of those employees looking for some liquidity, call up Sandhill and there'll be an auction. And is that the idea? Like, will another kind of like, if hypothetically an employee shows up from Epic Games tomorrow, would you, in theory, create another auction for them like next week? Or how are you thinking about that?
We would. The model is evolving. We only have one auction at a time today, but we're going to have multiple auctions, running at the same time soon, right? And that is the model, right? So like if somebody from Epic Games, an employee or like an early investor, right? We have investors also selling, like a seed stage investor now has 1,000x on their Epic Games investment, and the company hasn't IPO'd yet. They want to take some of the chips off the table, not sell the whole position, but sell a small portion of it to return money to LPs, to realize some of the gains, to de-risk a little bit. Same for employees. They want to pay for a house, a down payment, get married, pay off student debt. Like, these companies are staying private. Fundamentally, companies are staying private longer and longer and longer, right? And so it allows investors and early employees, employees and early investors to sort of de-risk and get liquidity. Famous example is AOL went public. They raised 10 million at a 70 post in their IPO, and like that's until like last year that was a seed round, right? And so like and you talk to any banker, right? You call up Goldman or Morgan or whatever, and they'll be like, you can't really go public these days unless you're in the sort of 5-10 billion market cap minimum, right? Is like, you could stay private so much longer. You raise money private. Also, the costs of going public are much higher. So like those two things put together are just companies staying private longer. And hence the need for liquidity. Right. I mean, employees can't really work somewhere for 15 years and not see a dollar on their equity.
Right. And I guess is your vision then to become the like stock market, like a NASDAQ or a NYSE for private markets? Is that kind of the vision? Got it. And then does that involve can you talk a little bit about the regulatory component? I know obviously investing in private companies has been typically, only allowed for accredited investors. Talk a little bit about, I guess, like what requirements you guys are, getting, or certifications or things like that.
It's a highly regulated space, right? So there's a lot of things we need to do, and structural things, and lawyers have to approve everything. And yeah, I mean, this is a NASDAQ for private markets. The funny thing is NASDAQ actually acquired a company 10 years ago, and they have their own NASDAQ for private markets.
Okay. I haven't heard too much about it.
Yeah. But directionally, I mean, that's the vision, right? Is because companies are staying private longer, a lot of the tooling that exists in the public markets now needs to exist on the private side, right? It's that simple.
It makes sense.
From a regulatory standpoint, this is regulated. So we are an ERA today. It's an exempt reporting advisor. So we advise the private funds and SPVs that people invest into. So structurally, when the auctions end, everyone pays one same price, which is it's a modified Dutch auction. People go into an SPV, and we have to do filings and reporting. It's typically Reg D 506C. We do all of that, and then the SPV is what owns the shares of the company, right? Epic Games. In the future, we may have other things, broker dealer, ATS, other ways for people to like trade directly, get out of positions, get liquid. But it is a complex legal framework.
Got it. That's great. Well, I guess, if there's anything, where can people find Sandhill? What's coming up? Tell us, a little bit about where we can find you as we wrap up.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter, Ali_Moiz. You could go to our website, sandhillmarkets.com. And those are generally the best ways to get in touch with us. Yeah.
Great. Well, Ali, thank you very much for joining us, and tune in for the next Sandhill auction. Hopefully next week, right?
Yeah, next week, every week.
Every week. Cool. Thanks again, Ali, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you so much for having me.